New Year's, same question, right? New Year's, same habits. Did everybody have a good New Year? Yes or no?
I did.
You did? You had a great New Year?
Great time with family. It was good. Rest up.
Good. Good. I'm glad to hear that, man. I want you guys to know that you guys are looking at the 2024 Monopoly champion. So, if you guys see my family, just make sure, you let them know that Lucas is the champion. They experienced it that night, but no, I always enjoy New Year's. We do a little New Year's thing, New Year's Eve thing. We get together with the family. Sometimes we'll play Monopoly. Sometimes we'll play Catan. Most of the time we keep our relationships together. Sometimes we don't. But you know how it goes, right? Family, you know how it is with family. And then a week later, you're all good, maybe. But yeah, it's 2025. Welcome to 2025. Who's excited about what's going to happen this year? Amen. You guys got big plans and goals for your life? No. All right. No. That's all right. That's about what I expected to hear. But we're going to talk today about the new year. We're going to talk about trusting God with our future, particularly 2025. Hopefully we trust God with our future as a whole, but we're going to talk about specifically the new year, right? So the scripture focus that we're going to come from today is Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11. It's one that's a very common scripture. You're going to hear me start reading it. You probably already know the reference. You probably already know the scripture just from the reference. But when I start reading it, you're going to be like, oh, yeah, I know that one. So Jeremiah 29:11 says this. For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. They are plans for good and not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope. So we're going to be talking about New Year's today. Not necessarily going to talk too much about just New Year's resolutions. We might get into that a little bit, but we're going to talk about, looking forward to the year, maybe reflecting on the last year a little bit and looking forward to the year. But I want to start the conversation this way, right? What is your typical approach to a new year? Easy question.
I'm not, every year I'm like, I don't really do resolutions. I'm not like, don't buy into that. But you can't help but like get to the new year and just like the whole vibe around New Year's is like a new page or like, what are you going to like do this year? You just kind of default into thinking about your goals and whatnot. So I usually do have a couple things in the back of my mind that like these are some habits I want to set or slight adjustments I want to make. Certain things I want to make sure I get done or do slightly differently. So I do usually spend some time thinking about the past year or and be like, oh, fresh start, like, wonder what's going to happen this year. I used to kind of be like, this is what I want to do by the new year. And then the last couple years, everything went up in flames. So I'm just kind of like, at this point, I'm like, wonder how this one's going to go. What crises are we going to face this year? So well, like that's a little pessimistic.
It's like you set goals and God laughs at you like, okay, you really think that you're going to do that? And he blows it up. So, but I kind of have the same approach, like examining the last year. And then I try to set some goals personally, get closer to God, spend time with family. I try to make it realistic because I don't want to exhaust goals. Because sometimes we make goals and then when we don't meet those goals, expectations, we get discouraged. Mm-hmm. So it's learning to be able to be realistic. So I sit down and jot some notes down of what I want to accomplish or maybe habits I want to be better at or, accomplish this year. So.
The other thing, I feel like it's kind of more of a reset for me versus like a new goals. Like I don't necessarily always set like, these are some new things I want to pick up. Maybe I might have a couple things, but like, okay, let me reset where my priorities are and just start fresh and be like, okay, these are things I wanted to do this year that didn't get done. So let's restart from the beginning. Like I said, rather than something new, but like, okay, let's reset and then start this whole process again.
Well, I think that's a good approach to having, whether it's having a plan to get new goals or resetting something that you maybe have already have or you haven't done in a while is important. Because there's a quote I remember at Cintas, they would in these meetings, they would have it, but it's like if you fail to plan, you're going to plan to fail. So that's why it's important to have some type of plan in place. Maybe if it's not detailed, or maybe it's like Sister Kate said, maybe just reset something. Like these are things that I notice I haven't done lately that I need to reset, and it's still a plan moving forward. So.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with all that. And I'll say probably the similar thing for myself. It's funny you mentioned that you go to the new year like, oh, I'm not going to be that, bro. I don't need to set New Year's resolutions. That's me, right? I'm always like in December, like, yeah, guys, you want to live your life in a way to where you don't want to, have to set new goals every single year on January 1. But then you get to New Year's and it's just kind of like, all right, well, these are the vibes right now.
Yeah.
Why not?
Everything does kind of feel different, even though nothing is different, right? But it feels different. There's a mentality change. With the flipping of the calendar, it comes with like a natural change in our minds as well. So then I do end up naturally just starting to think, okay, well, what things do I want to focus on? What kind of goals do I have? One problem that I say I face for myself is I kind of keep those goals internalized. I don't necessarily write them down. Because I usually don't really make huge goals when it comes to the New Year's. I think when it comes to big goals, I kind of do that throughout the year. But New Year's for me, I think I kind of focus on like smaller things about me. Okay, what do I want to change about me this year, or what do I want to see different, right? I know one of the biggest one that people do is like weight loss, weight gain, those types of things. But mental health could be one of them, right?
Absolutely.
Like, how do I want to improve my mental health this year? And writing it down and then making SMART goals. We had I think I taught a lesson on SMART goals, probably 3 years, 3 years in a row around New Year's. So if you guys haven't heard that, go back and look it up. If you're not, I can always send you my notes from years ago. But setting SMART goals is really important. You mentioned not wanting to feel overwhelmed by goals and being discouraged by the goals. We can kind of, abate some of that by setting SMART goals, realistic, measurable goals. So anyways, with that being said, how important is it that we set goals? You mentioned already, if you fail to make a plan, then you're planning to fail.
Yeah.
So how important is it that come New Year's, we make a plan for the next year coming up for 2025?
So I'm just going back, reflecting on experience through jobs. On another job that I had, they had this poster. They call it the 6 Ps, and it's proper planning prevents poor performance. And basically, the whole point behind that is you've got to kind of train your mind to properly plan in order to be successful. So I think, going back to your question, it is important. It is important because you can't really go anywhere if you don't have a target set, right? Mm-hmm. Things aren't just going to happen. So how I looked at it this year for myself, to try not to overwhelm, I try to think of it this way: setting goals. How do I get my goals met? Through mindset, changing my mindset. And here's areas where I try to set goals. And number one was personal, whether that could be weight loss, whether that could be a better me, or whatever that component is. Spiritually is another one. Family was another one, and then financial. So like that was four or five small goals, and try to think of. So family one would be making memories. That's another type of goals that I set. And if I can intentionally think about these and write these down and have it in the front part of my mind, then when it comes to the new year, which we're in now, you can start seeing those come to pass. But learning to properly plan is important. So setting goals is important.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think this is an area that I really struggle and I've learned a lot about, and I'm working on with like planning things out. Is like I'll kind of have a bunch of things like kind of floating in my mind, like whether it's a day at work or like just tasks around the house for the week, or even bigger picture that I want to get done, but actually sitting down to decide this is when I'm going to do it, this is how I'm going to do it, is an area that I struggle with, because like I am most comfortable in just kind of like going with the flow, like doing things as like, oh, like what do I feel like doing right now, or like I prefer to be in that mode, but that mode doesn't really work. Stuff builds up. Like one that stands out is, and this is one way that we balance each other very well because you're the opposite. And I remember like the week of Thanksgiving was also the week that we usually get our Christmas decorations up, and it was also Levi's first birthday. And so it was very overwhelming because like we had to get all this box. We have a lot of Christmas decorations, so we had to get all the boxes down. We had to get them all up, which is a whole day project. We have to get ready for Thanksgiving, which includes cooking. We have to get ready to have people over to the house for Levi's birthday, which means so there was a huge list of things that all had to get done. And so a week in advance, Lucas came and was like, all right, these are all the things that get done. When are we going to do them all? And we mapped out the whole week. Monday, we're going to get the boxes down. Tuesdays, we're going to go through it. Wednesday, we're going to put it all up. Thursday's Thanksgiving. Friday, get the tree. Saturday, clean, get ready for Levi's party. So we like mapped it out, and like it was an extremely busy week, but it was like not stressful. Like we accomplished each goal every day that we had scheduled out, and I was like, you mean like planning it out like makes it work out better? And I was like, oh my gosh, that was like not stressful. And a week that could have felt very overwhelming and panicking. It was busy. Sure, I was exhausted by the end of the week, but it wasn't like stress. Like the day of Levi's birthday, when we were having our family over, I wasn't like panicking because I'm like, oh my gosh, we have so much to do to get ready. So like all that to say, long story long, it's very important, and it actually really helps make these things feel more accomplishable and manageable.
Absolutely, I agree. We're talking about planning, right? How important is it to plan for the year? That was a very specific example for a very short period of time, right? Daniel, you mentioned the poster that you had at work, right? I wonder if we should just all have one of those posters at our house to remind us,
Right.
On like a weekly or a monthly basis that maybe we need to start planning, our month or our year out. And here's the thing, right? When you start looking at 2025 and you start getting this idea of setting goals and doing what we did that one week in Thanksgiving, trying to do that for like the entire year is like almost impossible. It feels very overwhelming. But what we can do that for is a month, right? Or if you don't want to do that for a month, you can do that for the week and then have another meeting the next week, plan smaller weeks out. That way you can plan the month out to meet, and then in those meetings plan the weeks out. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I see almost setting goals as almost like budgeting. Like no one wants to do that because you have to be honest with yourself and you're keeping yourself accountable too. Because like when you plan, so you knew like Monday, we got to get this done. If we don't get done, then it's going to affect the next day. Yes. And then eventually what we're trying to accomplish that Saturday is not going to get done. Mm-hmm. Budgeting is kind of similar as well. It's like we're almost afraid to confront it, but it's important that we do it because it makes the anxiety kind of go away. And it continues to be busy, but it feels less as stressful in all reality. But it's important. I think it's important that you take time to, and kind of meditate on it too, like meditate on the decisions that you're wanting to do, like especially when it comes to personal, you know what I mean? Being able to like self-reflect and be able to say, well, what do I want to accomplish? Or being honest with myself, what are areas that I need to improve in? Because sometimes we don't like always being honest with ourselves. We're afraid to be honest with ourselves sometimes because, we want to kind of put out that we're better than what we are in a better place. And our reality is we all have struggles and we have issues. So anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's kind of like a good segue for moving into our next question. But before we do move into our next question, no, I absolutely agree. You talk about if you don't meet one goal one day, it affects the rest of the week. How many people sometimes you just hate Saturday, right? Anybody? Like you get to a Saturday and you're just like, my Lord, I have so much to do at home. Like you get off work for the week and now you have so much to do at home, right? Yeah. Like I tell you what, I enjoy the weekdays more than I enjoy a Saturday. Because usually Saturday mornings, you just wake up and it's like an hour and a half of cleaning. And then it's just like whatever else needs to get done has to get done. And then like your whole Saturday is gone. And then it's come to church on Sunday. Usually church is good. But then like, if you're involved, you have things to do at church. Then the next thing you know, you're right back into the week. But if we are able to tackle our days better, right, really plan it out to where you're not doing quite so much on a Saturday, if you can just get small things done here and there, maybe we don't have to spend an hour and a half cleaning on a Saturday, yeah, right? Maybe we can knock a little bit out each day of the week to where Saturday morning, now we have just 30 minutes of cleaning,
Were you looking at your wife when you said that?
No, I wasn't looking at my wife when I said that. No. I'm the cleaner in the house, right? I'm the cleaner of the house. But no, that's one thing you hear a lot of families say. Saturday is their cleaning day, right? I hear a lot of people talk about how they have to clean on Saturdays. So that's just one of those things. But you mentioned, struggles, right? And anytime you enter into a new year, I mentioned it. It's a new day, but it's kind of the same thing, right? Yeah. But when you get into January, there's this hope, right? The transition of the year brings this era of hope. So before we get into the whole question, let's start with the struggles. What struggles do you foresee in 2025, or that you might be bringing from 2024? What anxieties might you be bringing that you can kind of like deal with now that you can know, hey, I need to deal with this going into 2025?
I think just especially with the like last few years, it's kind of like the fear of the like unknown. Like I joked earlier, but like what crises is going to happen this year that we're going to have to deal with. So like, I think I have learned to just go into it and be like, to stop saying this is my year or like this is going to be the best year ever. It's good to like come with that optimism, but you also have to be like, okay, what are we going to just kind of come in realistically, because we have no idea what could happen. You know, so many of the things that we've faced over the last couple of years have just been so completely out of the blue that we were not expecting, or just like came about within like a few weeks or months. And so I think just not knowing, the lack of, which of course is like, you know, lack of control, which you can unpack that in therapy, but you know, just not knowing like what might be around the corner. And of course, like me personally being a teacher, a lot of times like my brain is separated into school years versus the calendar year, because like I'm coming back to the same class that I had 2 weeks ago. So I'm kind of bracing myself for that because I have a tough group this year. So just this particular school year has been very stressful for me. So bringing that, when you ask like what anxieties are we bringing in, like, okay, how am I going to get to June? And then of course, looking forward to next school year, like what are we going to do? What are we going to do for Elliot's school, or like where Levi's going to be, or like, should I quit teaching? Like, I don't know. Like just, there's always, each year comes with a different set of questions for me personally, just because like every school year for the last like 5 years, I've been like, what am I doing next school year? So that's always a big question for me, which I know is specific to me, but still.
I would say along the lines of what you said, the fear of the unknown. I say with me is I've struggled in my mind losing another loved one that I'm close to. Losing my father last year, and then losing my grandfather a month ago. That was my mom's dad. It hits different, you know what I mean? And knowing that, not that I'm the man of the house anymore, but I also know there's a sense of responsibility that I have to make sure my mom's taken care of. And then I have a new baby, and making sure that I'm strong enough to be the father and the leader that I need to be. So sometimes that anxiety, that worries, and then you have struggles, you have rough days. So sometimes, you know, having that, it's really the trusting and the molding process that God is doing in me, you know, through it all. And I know He's going to get glory out of all of it. But when you're going through it, it's a struggle. You're learning, you have to learn to trust God, and then when you don't know why things happen. And so moving into next year, it does bring a burden sometimes, thinking about that. So I have to learn to trust God, and that's been a concern of mine. I'll be like, God forbid, what happened if I lost my mom? Or God forbid if something were to, and I know that's the enemy that plays in your mind, but as humans, we think about that stuff. Mm-hmm. So I would say that's kind of something, if I were to be honest, it's something I do struggle with at times.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of what I'm hearing here is that it's the same old problems, right?
Yeah.
You go into a new year with the same old problems. And the problem is that we get into this New Year's mindset of looking forward to the New Year's and making plans for what we want to see. And, you know, all these good thoughts come to our mind, and we have such high hopes, and we have such, you know, plans and grandeur. We have this idea, this almost, what's the word I'm looking for? Not idolized, but this grand idea of what the New Year is going to look like. And then
Romanticized.
That's what I'm looking for. We have this romanticized idea of what this New Year is going to look like, and we forget that we're bringing in ourselves with it, right?
Right.
And all these plans and all these hopes that we're making for the new year, we bring ourselves into the process as well. And as imperfect beings, we're going to deal with our same struggles, our same anxieties, our same personality defects, and then all the things around us that we can't control, right? So with that being said, how do we make these plans for the new year with the context of I'm still me, I'm still struggling, I'm still human, have all these things, and then add God into the mix of saying, all right, God, I'm trusting you with all this.
I think part of it is like when you have all these feelings, is taking some time to process what those feelings are and where they're coming from, and then like which of those fears and anxieties, stress, whatever, are real and manageable, and which ones are like you said, the enemy coming in and adding in lies, like, oh, what if somebody else dies, or like, because like just because, or like, what if, all those like crazy what if scenario, not necessarily even crazy, some of them are realistic. Like, so just recognizing, like what you said, very good, like that's a lie of the enemy, and kind of filter out, okay, this is something that I'm worried about that I do need to manage and set goals to accomplish. Like what I said about where Elliot's going to go to school next year. I do have to figure that out. I do have to decide that and weigh those pros and cons. And so kind of filtering out, what is a story I've made up in my head, what's a lie I've got from the enemy, and what is something that I do need to kind of filter through and figure out, and what can I do to like actually take steps to manage, and also just continually surrendering all of that to God, and through by praying through it, like, help me see what's real, what's not real, what you want for me. And so when I say like filter all those things out, filter that also through like prayer and wise counsel where necessary, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with you, because I've reflecting on last year. There's times that I would not know why I'd wake up in a bad mood or respond, and I didn't really know why. Like, I didn't know I had these feelings and these thoughts in my mind. I'm just like, where are these like coming from? Like, why am I dealing with? And all reality is, it's probably with what I was dealing with. Mm-hmm. And I realized that through it all, it had affected me personally, even in my marriage, my communication with her, and just because I didn't really know how to express myself. But one thing, I had a friend over last week. They came over for a little bit, and he was just sharing some of the stuff was going on. And I remember I just told him, and I said, there's no way that you're going to make it through the situation you're in unless you trust in God to get you through it. And I was like, the reason why I said it, and you're like, oh, that's the Christian answer and what you should say all the time. Yes, that is, but it's different when you're actually living it. So when I was thinking all the time with my dad, I have had some counsel to being able to help me through this. But what has helped me the most is trusting in God and understanding I want His will more than my will. When you have that desire that I say, God, I surrender where I want your will more than my will, you have the understanding, like, there's a peace that comes in that. That's where I can have my dad dying, and then even though I'm a wreck, I can have a little peace because I know this is what God wanted. This is what He wanted. So in that moment of weakness, God uses Brother Lucas to help me in those moments. He did encourage me. God used Pastor, and many of you that are in this have helped encourage and pray for my family. But what really helped me is when I got alone with God. Right. And I said, God, I will not make it unless you help me. Mm-hmm. So when you realize, as you reflect on last year and you move to this year and you're setting goals, everything is around God. Right. Because God's the one that gave me the strength to get through last year. So when I'm moving the next year, God must be the focus point in which all my desires and my goals are being filtered through. Yeah. So that's and that builds relationship. Mm-hmm. The trusting aspect, this trusting component, God never failed me through it all, even in the hurt. So that kind of helps me, Lord, what can I do next year that can benefit your kingdom? How can I be a better husband, be a better leader in the church? Because that's all what God would want me to do. So anyway, I might be off topic a little bit, but it comes down to relationship with God and trusting. So.
No, you're good. I think you're absolutely on topic. Before you say anything, I'll let you go in a second. But one thing that I like about what you're saying right now, and that I'm specifically hearing, is that when you're making these goals for this upcoming year, you have to have something, right? You have to have a filter, right? Everything needs to be centered right around God. Whatever plans it is, how can I please God with this, right? It's funny. Sometimes I think we make all these goals, and they're just like, it's like a shotgun. You're just scattering. You make a goal here, you make a goal here, but to what end, right? Who do you want to be? What do you want to be? What 2025? What's your theme for 2025? You know, you go to businesses have themes, churches have themes, you know, but we never do that with our own life. Why not?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Why not have a theme for what am I going to do with myself this year? What am I going to make my plans center around this year? What do I want this year to accomplish for me, and what do I want to accomplish this year? You were going to say something?
And I know some people do like pick a word for the year, which I'm only like, that's a nice idea, and then I never do. I did do that with our children, but anyway, that's off topic. But I think it's so powerful what you're saying that like you said, like, oh, trust in God, that's the Christian answer. And I think because, like, you know, it is kind of like, oh, well, just trust God. And, like, you know, we put Jeremiah 29:11 on a coffee mug. Like, it feels really nice. But, like, I think it's good to have the reminder sometimes, like, this is a real thing. Like, yes, that's the Christian answer. Yeah, we love Jeremiah 29:11. But, like, there's a reason for that. Like, that's a real thing that we're saying. And it is more important than anything. So I think it's good. I love hearing you talk about that because it's like, you know, even a reminder for me that we're like, oh, you just got to trust God. Yeah, you do. And like, we have to like not just say it and not just, you know, put it on a bumper sticker. Like you have to internalize that. Like that's, I know like when Daniel says like, well, I trust God with it, I know he means it. And like, I want that. I want that to be like in my heart. I truly just, especially with how, you know, at this age, like where, you know, you never know what crisis is around the next corner. And so like, if you have a baseline, like you said, a foundation, a baseline of like, I trust God, it doesn't matter what crisis comes your way. Yeah, it's going to be hard and painful sometimes, but when you have that baseline, that foundation of peace, it changes everything.
I would say a thing that I've learned from last year is life is short. We're not going to be here forever. And so with that in mind, moving into this year, I remember I was just praying. I said, God, with life being short, with death being around me and being real that as it's been, I was like, I want to take every opportunity that I have to make memories with my family and try my best to be what God wants me to be. And I felt kind of the tug of the Holy Ghost, even when I was on a drive yesterday, picking my mom up. But as I was kind of praying and thinking about it, is knowledge is power, right? Knowledge, when you give knowledge and information to someone, it can be good or bad. It could be bad information where it can discourage someone, but it also can be good information. Information can lead to transformation. So when you begin to give someone information about something, it can transform the lives. So in my mindset, I'm like, God, this year, I want to tell someone about God more than ever before, because that's information. That's telling them, hey, they're in a weak spot, dealing with drugs, dealing with issues. I've got information that I can give to them that they can receive, and if they allow it, it can be transformation in their life. And that's kind of the mindset. I said, God, I struggle with praying ghosts sometimes, I'll be honest. But I said, Lord, help me to do better, because what we're really doing is we're giving information out to people. We're saying, hey, there's a church here that prays for you, that loves you. That's information. We don't know what that person's going through that day. So one of the things I said, God, I'm going to be more committed to doing that this year than I've been in the past, because I'm giving information out. And it's a seed that's being sown that can reach to someone. So those have just been a challenge into me to saying, listen, whatever it takes for God to move, whatever it takes, we got to get out of this pride mentality, this mindset that we're getting something from what we're a part of. We really shouldn't think that way. Whether we're serving in the leadership, it ought to be about, hey, how is this benefiting the kingdom? If I'm doing something where I don't get any praise out of it, but someone comes to God, that's what matters, right? So that's something that God's been filtering. Maybe God has allowed this whole process this past year with my father to kind of maybe bring me to that point to realize, dude, it's all about the kingdom, dude. There's no Daniel in this thing at all. This is about reaching people, and whatever it takes for us to see souls saved, that's what we got to be about. And I'm sorry, I've kind of chased around.
No, you're good.
But anyways.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you 100%. And you're talking about this information. And it's funny, last night when we were here for prayer, I found myself praying, God, this year, I want more knowledge than I've ever had before, so that when people ask me questions when I'm speaking, I know what I'm speaking is true and good. So it's interesting that you're talking about there's good information, and that information can cause transformation, because that's one of the things I just found myself praying. just yesterday was, God, I want more knowledge than I've ever had before, and not necessarily about like worldly knowledge, right? I'm talking about like spiritual knowledge of God, knowledge of the Word. And while I was praying, one of the things that I'm not going to say God spoke to me in that moment. One of the things that I was thinking about while I was praying was, well, how am I going to get that? Some of that is going to be God, I think, imparting knowledge into me. I think the easiest part would be like, while I'm sleeping, God just to speak to me in dreams. That'd be nice, right? God just start imparting, rewiring my brain and just writing more knowledge down in my head, right? Wouldn't that be nice? But that's probably not going to be the way it works. So then I started praying, God, call me into times of study, right? Call me into times of prayer. And I think if we approach the year with the mindset of a goal or a theme, right? Like, I want more knowledge this year, or I want this. Have a plan for your life for the year. I think that's what's going to allow God to move more in you along those lines. Does that make sense?
That makes a ton of sense.
So yeah, I absolutely agree with what you were saying. So I want to kind of like shift it a little bit. We talked about struggles, bringing struggles into 2025. What hopes do you have for 2025?
That. I mean, I really, one thing that I've been thinking a lot about, and like the 40 Days of Fire kind of got my mindset going, like thinking about like how I want to approach things differently. Like that was only a couple months ago, but it's like, it got me thinking about like, okay, the nice thing about 40 Days of Fire happening in like September, October, it was kind of like a warm up, like a little preview. And I'm like, okay, what things am I going to do? It got me thinking like, okay, what am I going to do in 2025? Like, how do I want to approach the next year better? Because a lot of times, we try to start something new and then we kind of fall off a little bit. And then we're like, oh, well, now it's April. I'll try next year. I feel like 40 Days of Fire kind of did that for me. Like, I was like, yeah, I'm going to do all this new stuff. I'm going to, like, reprioritize. I'm going to know God better. And then, like, the holidays happen and, like, life. So now I'm, like, kind of getting to that point where I kind of am, like, back down here. But now it's a new year, so we can start fresh. Like I said, the reset. But I just want to, like, kind of reprioritize just the day-to-day and like how I kind of approach my mindset towards things, because like this phase of life is with like, young kids and working full time, like it's busy and it's exhausting. Like there's constantly, like, I feel like life is just like flying past and I'm like, wait, I can't catch up. And it feels very overwhelming and like, all the tasks all day that have to get done. It makes things feel like they're going by really fast. But I really want to just kind of like, put God first every day, like small habits that I can put in place. Like, okay, I'm not going to like access any of my usual like entertainments until I've done read my chapters for the day. Or, certain, my commute each day, like in the morning, I only listen to worship music. I don't put on anything else, but like, okay, can I add some prayer time into that? And just making sure, and then also, okay, this is the season of life I'm in. I can't make it less busy, right? I can't make it less stressful. Having little young children is stressful sometimes, but like, how can I just kind of embrace the chaos and like, find those like small joys day to day. So I don't necessarily have like any big goals. Do I want to figure out what I'm doing next school year? Yes. But like my main thing is like, okay, how can I just make whatever happens this year, whatever wonderful things or hard things happen this year, how can I make God the center of it? Like I was praying yesterday, like I want my default to be on God and trust, and like you said, trusting Him and just finding my joy and my foundation in God, in the presence of God, and that He's walking with me every day. That it doesn't matter what's happening around me, I can come back to that every day.
And I think what you said, making God your default and drawing close to Him.
Yeah.
One of the things that when you were just talking, it's like if you would examine yourself in here and you were to say, what is my priorities in my life right now? You know what I would say? Look at your schedule. Mm-hmm. Look at your routine every day, and that will tell me what you prioritize. And that's convicting for me, because I've been in chill mode at Christmas, and I know we've all been there. But when you're trying to get closer to God, it's routine. Routine matters.
Right.
right? How you wake up, do you brush your teeth, you make your bed? Like people are like, oh, that's silly. No. It matters because what you're doing, you're putting up a habit, right? The more you do it, the more you're gonna be successful in something. But check your schedules and be like, what's my priority? Am I gonna be close to God this year? And it comes back to what I was saying is a mindset. Like, okay, so I want to be close to God this year. That's my main focus. All right, and I'm sure a lot of people in here have that same mindset. So if I want to be close to God this year, I got to make sure I'm faithful to church, right? That's very simple, but I was thinking about it. We have people, not saying maybe in here, but in our Sunday morning, they come to church and say, I want to be close to God, but they struggle coming to church. That would be my main focus. God, if I'm not faithful to this church this year, help me to be faithful to church. That's a simple mindset, simple goal that I can have. Praying, whatever it is, 10 minutes a day. Or if you want to be 30 minutes, if it's 5 minutes a day, I'm setting a precedent of a routine, and I'm doing something. And there was actually a quote, and I know you're wanting to move over, and I'll say it real quick. Let me find it. It's actually Martin Luther King. He says, if you don't fly, then run. If you don't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. So no matter what goals you set, your goal could be, I want to teach 5 Bible studies, right? And you may never get to that, but you may teach 1. Guess what you did? You moved forward, right? I want to be better financially, and I want to pay debt off, right? I want to get this, I've got 5 credit cards, right? One's 1,000, one's 100, or 10,000. I got one that's $100. I was never able to pay off that off, but I was able to get the $100 one off. Guess what? You move forward, right? So that same type of thinking, apply that to whatever your goals that you have in mind, whether it's big or small. Better marriage, which I want to have a better marriage. Lord, help me to be a witness. Help me to be sensitive to your spirit. Lord, and I may never get to that level to where I'm walking on cloud 9 all the time. But guess what? I've built my relationship with God and my trust in him. And guess what? God has become my default. And that's kind of what my end goal. God, I want you to be my default in everything I do. Let you filter my career, my marriage, all that stuff. Anyway, I'm chasing a rabbit, but
You're good.
go ahead.
This has all been really good, and unfortunately, we are getting close to time. But while you guys were sitting here talking, kind of one of the things, I'm going to throw a surprise question at you. But one of the things I'm thinking about is this is all nice. This is all really good. This is really powerful. But sometimes we don't know what it actually looks like to do those things, right? You're talking about the goal is, or your hope is, I want to be closer to God this year. Or you mentioned, I want to have a better marriage. Or I want to be more comfortable this year. Or I want to have more peace this year, right? First, before I even ask the question, I would say define what that actually looks like for you, right? So when you say, I want to be closer to God, if your goal is to be closer to God this year, what does that actually look like? What do you mean when you say, I want to be closer to God? For you individually, what does I want to be closer to God mean? Does that mean that you want to walk around like you're floating all the time? And God, you just have this direct channel where God is just speaking to you about everybody's life? Like, what does it actually mean? Do you want to feel goosebumps while you're driving down the road every time? Or do you want to be more faithful? Define what being closer to God means to you. So what I'm going to ask you guys for this, for the last question, how would you encourage someone to actually create a theme for themselves for the year 2025 and make a plan? Quickly. If you can.
I would say you have to find what works for you and what makes sense for you to include that into your day to day. And I think for me, it just it starts with working the things of God into your schedule, like what you were saying. So I love listening to audiobooks. So something that made sense to work into my routine is me and a friend picked a year-long Bible reading plan, and the New Life app has an audio Bible on it. And so I have our chapters in my calendar every single day that I have to listen to. And I have the widget on my lock screen. So every day I look at my phone. These are the chapters I have to listen to today. And so before I play one of my audiobooks, I listen to those chapters for that day. And I have in my mind, I'm not listening to anything else until I've listened to those. So that's just a very tangible. And so even we just finished Numbers, which is very boring. Even if it is very mundane, even if I didn't get anything out of it, it's still, I'm listening to it every single day. It's just something that is coming in. So something very simple like that can really help. I won't go too far into other things, but just like I said, something easy that you can work into your routine so that it's part of your mind every day.
Okay, I'll try to make this quick. So what she said is being close to God may look different from one person to another. Like for me, I want to be sensitive to God. I want to be able to I want to be so close to God to where I can hear kind of the sensitive tugging of God to minister to people. But I think for me to do that is a routine in prayer. But sometimes we can get so caught up on something that we're trying to become that we neglect the present. And that's kind of where, if you can be present and try to be close to God. And I know it's almost impossible. Like, how can I be close to God, pray without ceasing? What does that exactly mean? What is that? But it's learning to train your mind to focus on things of God more than things of the flesh. Because we hear that analogy, you feed your flesh, whatever you feed the most is going to take priority. So I think if you can learn to be able to channel my desires, my thinkings, my plan, and my energy more to the things of God, the output is going to be kingdom things. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but I like what both of you guys had to say. Thank you for having the conversation with us up here today. I hope everybody out there, I hope you got something out of it. If you guys want, like, any details on how to actually set goals, reach out. Like I said, there's so many different things about how to set goals and really how to make a plan. So if you guys want any more information about that, feel free to reach out. I'm pretty sure Brother Daniel's great at that as well. He can just treat it like it's a budget, and then he'll be able to make a great plan for you. Otherwise, I hope you guys have a great rest of your Sunday. We have 10 minutes before we're going to announce church service is starting in 5 minutes. So 15 minutes till church starts, and there's light refreshments out there, bathrooms, use the restroom. Let's come back, make this into a house of worship. I'm excited for what God's going to do. First service of the year. I think God's going to do some crazy stuff. I think God's going to do some amazing stuff, but it starts with us. So let's come back, make this into a house of worship, get our minds focused, and get rid of all distractions. Sound good? Amen. Amen. All right, see you guys in a few minutes.